Alright, so continuing our review of the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana expert classes, we are heading into the Ranger now. Just did a video on the Bard, should be up, and also did a video earlier today about the Jeremy Crawford interview we had about the playtest packet. Just to quickly summarize, what we're getting here are the expert classes, so that's the Bard, the Ranger, and the Rogue. Then we're also getting a lot of feats, we're getting spell lists, and we're getting a huge rules glossary. And I'm just going to take it a bit at a time. So in this video, it is the Ranger that we're focusing on, and something that I'm actually quite intrigued by, because the Ranger is probably the class that most people wanted to see reworked. Maybe it's down there with the Monk, at least, for classes that really need some aid. So it's interesting to see where they've landed with the Ranger. I will be putting out more videos covering this playtest material, so if you want to stay tuned for that, you can subscribe to the channel. But let's just jump into it and take a look at the Ranger from the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana expert classes playtest material. Alright, so we have the Ranger from 5e on the left, and we have the new Ranger on the right. The first thing we have, of course, is expertise. We all know that one, not a biggie, but you do get it at first level, so that's something. Then we have favorite enemy, and this is probably one of the biggest changes you're going to get here, because before you had all this stuff for favorite enemy where you choose a different type, you would have some advantages against that creature, but nothing that was really too powerful. You basically were better tracking it and knew some more stuff about it. Not that interesting. You could get in language as well. Now you get to always have Hunter's Mark spell prepared. It doesn't count against your number of spells. You don't have to concentrate on it, and it always lasts for its full duration or until you are incapacitated or choose to end it. Is this better than the favorite enemy from the player's handbook? Obviously, it's way better, because the favorite enemy from the player's handbook didn't do anything. It sucked. But it's not that fun. I don't get why Hunter's Mark is still a spell. Why not just not make it a spell and make it a Ranger class feature? I think that would be perfectly fine to do. And in the way they've done it here is that you don't choose a creature type now. You can just favorite enemy any creature, but you have to use the spell slots, which are very limited. It's not concentration, so there's all kinds of weird stacking stuff. If Hex is still the same, you can stack Hex and Hunter's Mark to deal insane amounts of damage. So I don't particularly like that necessarily. It comes in at first level, so any character that picks up a single level of Ranger is going to get that favorite enemy, Hunter's Mark, no concentration. I think there's not a lot to love about the way they've handled this, in my opinion. Is it stronger? Yes. Is it better? No. I think it's less flavorful. We're also not getting natural explorers, so there's none of that. You're good in this terrain. You're good at the exploration stuff. They've sort of just taken the flavor out of the character instead of just giving it concentration, this damage spell. And that's not, for me, very compelling. It doesn't give me a reason to specifically play the Ranger over anything else. Moving down, we have spellcasting, which is prepared spellcasting now, so it's no longer, as we could see before, spells known. This is a huge buff for the Ranger. It also comes in at first level, so the Ranger is very front-loaded with expertise, favorite enemy, and spellcasting at first level. Really good stuff. You get cantrips as well, so that's also great. You must choose from the primal spell, and you can't choose evocation spells, so you're not going to get those straight-on damage spells, or at least not that many of them, but otherwise it is undoubtedly more powerful than it was before. Of course, it's nice that spellcasting is better, but honestly, I probably would have preferred that they didn't have spellcasting and spellcasting came in from subclasses instead, because I think the idea of a spell-less Ranger, or a Ranger that has some abilities that gives it single spells, like Hunter's Mark or whatever you have, is more fun than just a straight spellcaster Ranger. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, I often am. So, moving down, we get a fighting style at second level, and that's the same as before. We have a Ranger subclass at third level, so also the same, extra attack and feet. No big changes here, but we are missing Primeval Awareness. Not a huge loss for anyone. It was really bad. You didn't really get to use it a whole lot, and you had to expend your spell slots to use it, so but even so, it was sort of like, this is the Ranger's mystical feature. It knows what creatures are around, and now it's just not there. So again, I feel like the Ranger is losing flavor. And my issue is here that Obviously, the Player's Handbook 5e Ranger it wasn't a very great design, but the ideas were correct. I like, personally, Favorite Enemy. I like Natural Explorer. I like Primeval Awareness as concepts that tell us a ranger is this kind of outdoorsy type that can sense its favorite enemy, and it is really good against orcs or dragons or whatever. And you could sort of flavor your character like that. Before, you'd get extra attack 5th level, and now you also get that subclass feature at 6th level, so that is a buff. That's great. You get roving, where your speed just increases by 10 feet, also great. And you have a climb speed and swim speed equal to speed, also great. So huge buff at 7th level compared to before, no doubt about that. The 8th level feat, before you had land stride, which basically meant that you ignored difficult terrain. There was some other stuff, but difficult terrain was basically it. You don't get that now. Roving is sort of that instead. So you skip that. Then there is a feat, and then you get expertise at level 9. So another buff. That's better than the ranger from the Player's Handbook. And then you get a subclass feature at 10th level, and you don't get hide in plain sight. Not a lot of people are gonna miss hide in plain sight, because it was just useless, basically. It was one of the least used features ever. So that's not a feature I'm sad to see go, because that's just bad feature. No doubt about that. Tireless. Tireless is pretty good. When you finish a short or long rest, you get temporary hit points. My only issue here is that competes probably with Inspiring Leader. There's a lot of like features and class features and feats that other characters can take that sort of makes this feature not very good. So it'll sort of depends on what kind of party you're in, because there's a lot of ways to get temporary hit points already. Then you have decreased exhaustion. If you're exhausted when you finish a short rest, your level of exhaustion decreases by 1. Also quite good. Exhaustion has been changed. A huge spoiler, we're going to cover that in another video, and this makes this probably not as good as it would have been in 5e, but it also sort of depends how often you're going to get exhaustion, stuff like that. So it's decent. I like Tireless. It's a good addition. Definitely a buff compared to something like Hide in Plain Sight. Then we have another feat at 12 level, and then we have Nature's Veil at 13 level. As a bonus action, you can spend a spell slot and become invisible until the end of your next turn. Note that you don't become uninvisible when you attack or cast a spell. So you can use a bonus action at the start of your turn to become invisible. You can attack and cast spells, and whatever you do, stay invisible until your next turn, where you're also invisible when you attack and cast spells and move around. So even though it may seem like a lot to expend a spell slot, doing this is actually really, really powerful. I would have probably liked to see it be something that you can only use when you're outdoors and when you're in your favorite terrain, if you had something like that, and maybe remove the spell slot thing, but have it be proficiency per long rest, something like that. I think that would be better, but I like this feature. It's definitely more useful than Vanish, which is just hide as a bonus action on your turn, like a bad cunning action. Subclass feature, fine, feral senses, so that's Blindside, which the ranger now gets. They did get feral senses at 18 level before. This was just Blindside written out, and now it's just Blindside, so that's better. And it also comes earlier at 15 level. Another feat, and then we have Foe Slayer, where your Hunter's Mark now deals an extra 1d damage, 1d10 damage to a target rather than an extra 1d6. So that's 2 damage extra per attack, so probably 6 damage per turn for the ranger if you're making 3 attacks, which you probably are if you're dual wielding. Not super overwhelming, better than the Bard's capstone feature still, but yeah, it's decent. I'd say I still want it to be something with favorite enemies, something a bit more interesting probably. And then you have feat and an epic boon. So we're just going to quickly cover the Hunter before we also wrap up on the Ranger. The Hunter is the subclass they present here, and at 3rd level you would get a ability to hit a creature once per turn and deal an extra 1d8 damage if it's missing any of its hit points. So 1d8 extra damage per turn against creatures that are missing the hit points, which are probably most creatures you're going to hit. I think it was a Hunter feature already, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Hunter archetype. Yeah, so that was the Colossus Slayer feature, basically. Now you don't get to choose Giant Killer or Hordebreaker, so less interesting. I don't know why they wouldn't just let you choose still. Most people chose Colossus Slayer because it's better, but I don't think you see a problem with having options. Anyway, then we have Hunter's Law, which is where you can, when you mark a creature Hunter's Mark, you know the immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities. So that's the Monster Hunter Slayer subclass, I think. Feature that's pretty similar to that. Not super powerful, somewhat powerful, decent. multi-attack, you always have Conjure Barrage, and you can also cast a spell with first and second level spell slot. When you do so, the spell's damage is reduced by 1d8 for each spell slot level below third. This is interesting because you're downcasting a spell. That's entirely new. That's not something we've done before in 5th edition, and I think it's pretty fun. I think that all spells should be able to be downcasted with features such as this. Maybe it shouldn't be available because then you could just get Fireball at first level and it'll deal less damage. But allowing the Ranger to cast Conjure Barrage, downcast it, that's pretty fun. It's a fun new mechanic to introduce. I kind of like that. Then we have Superior Hunter's Defense. When you're hit by an attack, you use your reaction to half the attack's damage against yourself and redirect the other half of damage to another creature. And that's unlimited. You can do that every single turn. Just once per round, obviously. But still really great. Really, really great ability. Much better than we had before, where you would have evasion, for example. Now you get Superior Hunter's Defense, so that's really strong. All right, so overall, it's safe to say that the Ranger we get in this 1D&D UA is much stronger than the Ranger from the original 5e Player's Handbook. I don't think there can be any doubt about that, at least not in my opinion. Every single feature it has is better than it was before. Its spellcasting is better. It has cantrips. It has a better subclass that gets more features. So obviously the Ranger is better. But in a way, and this is a bit weird to say, I think it's worse. I don't like it. I really... Maybe it's not worse because the flavorful features that the Ranger had before were so useless. But it's still... they just took the flavor out of it. I don't see any flavor at all in these features. There's nothing that tells me that the Ranger is anything else than a rogue with some spellcasting that likes to be outdoor. I want that specific feeling like this is a Ranger, and that was something that I got from Natural Explorer, even if we had to house rule it to actually make it useful, or favorite enemy that we had to add some Utilio Wisdom modified damage, for example, which we did. So yeah, what I'm probably trying to say is that while I appreciate that they're making the Ranger better and they're making it an actual good class, it has so little that actually gives it flavor that if I want to play something that's good at fighting, I'll just play a fighter. If I want to play something that's good in nature, I'll probably just play a druid. Would I play a Ranger? Probably not, because it doesn't, for me personally, it doesn't speak to me. There's nothing in here that tells me this is the kind of character I am. I'm going to be the best at this specific thing. So yeah, maybe the subclasses are going to do that more. I would have liked to see the Hunter do it more. So yeah, I can't really say much more beyond that. I'm a bit disappointed. I think I would like them to go back and instead of taking the flavor out of the Ranger, then making better abilities out of the flavor. Abilities that actually work. Something that allows the Ranger to feel like a natural explorer and someone who has a favorite enemies, and figure out ways to make that work instead of just scrapping it and making it this kind of vanilla outdoorsy hunter type character. So yeah, that's my opinion on the 1D&D Ranger. It'll be fun to playtest this one. It is obviously better designed than the 5th edition Ranger, and in that way it is an improvement. However, I dislike the lack of flavor for it. I'm also going to be covering more stuff from the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana expert classes, so if you want to stay tuned for that, you can subscribe to the channel by clicking somewhere down below. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot left to say, except thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I'll see you in the next video.